Today we'll be speaking with Norman Lynch. Me and Norman go way back. We've been golf buddies for the past 3 or 4 years over in the Laguna area. Norman is a business tycoon. We won't over-exaggerate that, but he's going to tell us all about his story from starting off in the UK as a young man to running and operating a multi-million-dollar operation. So we'll dive much more deeper into those details. So without further ado, let's get this started. One quick thing, we found an amazing feature on YouTube. You should check this out. If you're watching this video and you click on any time place on the video itself, click on the description and chapters will appear. From these chapters, you can decide what part of the podcast you would like to watch. Hope you enjoy. Norman, thanks for joining us today.
No problem.
Yeah, now, I know this is something you wouldn't regularly do, but
Correct.
Maybe I've convinced you by having a few drinks in the past to get on this.
Yeah, you got me when I was drunk.
Yeah, I got you when we had a couple drinks. So we'll make this really simple and just dive into it. Well, let's start off with a quick introduction about yourself, who you are, and where you've come from and what brought you to where you are now.
You want to start at the beginning?
Yeah, let's start right at the beginning. Maybe even from where were you born? Maybe a little bit a background under your family, and let's lead that up into your first business venture.
Okay, born in London by Welsh parents. They'd come up from Wales because there was no work down there, and they moved up in the 50s and something like that. And I'm from a family of 7 kids.
Yep.
4 girls, 3 boys. I'm the middle of the 3 boys, and all the 4 girls are older. And we had a very rough upbringing in many, many ways. My father, I never knew worked because he had multiple sclerosis, so couldn't work. My mother was a seamstress and made money by, as the kids went to bed at night time, she would get her gear out and start making dresses for people and stuff like that. So that's the background to an early age, yeah?
Yep.
Then we had 10 years of schooling, of which I lost 5. So when I was actually in school, I didn't have a clue what they were talking about. So the education was pretty poor.
I think we need to push it up a bit.
A little bit.
A little bit closer. A little bit closer. Yeah. Whatever is more. Is that comfortable for you?
Yes, right.
Okay. Yeah, that's better because I just find it's more like when you're not so close, like because it's so directional. That's to stop things like the aircon that you'll kind of fade in. Yeah. But I think that's okay. Let's try that there. Yeah, that's fine. Continue. So your mother was a seamstress, and you're talking about you missed 5 years of your education.
And therefore, when I was at school, I knew nothing that was going on really. Too much. I missed too much.
So you weren't going to school from age pretty much 5 to 10?
5 to 10, yeah.
5 to 10, and then during that time you were learning at home. And I remember we were talking. You've explained this story to me in the past as well.
No, I was in hospital most of the time, so wasn't at home doing anything. But anyway, the love of money came about because it gave me security, and that was the reason.
Yeah.
So I started things like normal kids do with the paper round. I had 2 paper rounds in the morning, 1 in the evening. I'd start selling papers on a Thursday when the paper shop was closed, and you could make a few quid extra by doing things like that. On a Friday evening, I'd go down to Jackman's and Greengrocers and worked on that, and worked all day Saturday in the Greengrocers as well. The only day off was Sunday, other than the 2 paper rounds in the morning and a paper round in the evening. So that was how we set about. Left school at 15 and had a very interesting job for less than a year. Yep. That was I worked for J. Arthur Rank. J. Arthur Rank at that time was the biggest filmmaker in England, in Britain. And I was a messenger in their head office, 38 South Street, Mayfair, which is still there today, yeah? And through that, met a lot of beautiful people. Girls mainly, right? Very nice, very good. I won't say too much about that, I don't think, but there, and I left there about a year later and went into flooring, just simply laying floors. Yeah.
What got you into that? Going into flooring, was it a connection? Was it a passion?
the need for money. I needed a job.
Yep.
And it was clear that the job I was doing wasn't where the actual money was. And at that time, the only people doing all these timber floors, beautiful timber floors, were the Italians. And there was a big guy who used to come into the factory where I worked. I wanted to get outside. Named Tony Catoli, a man of about 18, 19 stone with big popping eyes, right? And I started running little favours for him. And I said to him one day, listen, Tony, I want to get out and earn some money. That's why I'm here. So he simply went in the office and he just said to the guy, the Norman's coming with me and we're going to go out and we're going to do some work. Yeah?
This is the Italian guy then.
Yeah, so
I'm guessing that's your accent.
So he started working, yeah?
Yeah.
And normally in the building industry, summertime you're busy, wintertime very, very little. I worked with them, and this company I worked with under Tony Catoli was the Metropolitan Flooring Company. A few years later, they ran short of work. I moved into a company called Davis Flooring.
And what year is this? Or
This would be 60, what was 51, 60, early 70s.
Early 70s.
Early 70s, yeah.
Okay.
Worked under a piece master in Davis Flooring. I was at then 19, his son 31, 32. And after a few years, he asked me, the piece master, to go into business with his son. And I said no. Oh, he wanted 5,000 quid for doing so, right? And I said, no, I'm not paying for that. He said, well, do it for nothing. Go in with Joe. And I said, no, I don't want to. He said, why not? I said, because Joe's a nice guy, but he's a lazy kid. And he's no good in business. I know that. Yeah? I was only 19 at the time. So he sacked me. So I went home, and I remember my mum saying to me, you've got to get up early in the morning. I said, no, I've just been sacked. She said, well, we need money. I said, don't worry about it. It's not a problem. The piece master came round my house on the Sunday. He sacked me on the Friday night, came round on the Sunday and said, look, why won't you go with Joe? I said, he's no good in business. You know that. You're trying to get rid of him on me. I said, but I'll tell you, I'll do it under one circumstance. He just signed a contract in Wolverhampton, and it was the largest wood block floor ever laid off of one line. Now, that won't mean anything to you, but what I mean is this. If you laid this room here, which is quite small, in the wood block herringbone pattern, and you were slightly offline, you'd never reach the wall. This room was so big that the two foremen running it ran on bicycles around the place. It was enormous, right? And he first told me to get lost, and then he thought about it. He said, okay, come in. And I used him and all his Italian relatives to lay the floors, right? And we started work there. That was the age of 19. And we did some interesting work down there as well. And I remember we had a job, holiday camp. And I was getting men down there to work for nothing, simply so they could tell their wives they were coming to work with me for the weekend, yeah? We were, in fact, doing the floors in Pontin's holiday camp on the coast. And we were all young guys then, and lots of young women.
Where was this located in the UK? Outside of London, or?
No, on the coast, yeah. I'm right on the seaside.
Okay.
So we were getting guys to come down, and the deal I did with them was this. I'll ring your wife and tell her I need help. You'll come down Saturday morning or Friday night, up to you. We've got all the chalets so we can sleep, and that isn't a problem. Because the holiday club was open. Part of it was open already, yeah? But I'm not going to pay you, and you'll work till 4 o'clock Friday, Saturday afternoon. You'll have Saturday night, Friday night, and all day Sunday to yourself. So I was getting the work done for nothing, yeah? So that proved to be quite good. And we did this for several times, and then after a couple of years, Joe was just getting lazier and lazier.
This was just to give the guys an excuse to get away from the weekend.
Yeah.
And sorry, they actually did the work for you, but unpaid, so it's...
Yeah, it's good for me, obviously, right?
I gotcha. Yeah.
But now, the guy that was running the holiday camp had ordered the flooring. And I don't know how he got this from, but he ordered far too much, but he didn't know it. Yeah. So not only do we had that little bonus going on, we were also working with other places and taking this flooring and laying it in other shops for nothing, sort of thing. But I wasn't I was getting it for nothing, then we charged you good money for it. Anyway, after a little while, I split up with Joe for personal reasons. I won't go into that too much, but we split up on personal reasons. And I'll never forget, we had a bad winter. Second winter we were in business. And he said to me one day, we've got £3.50 in the bank. We can go and watch the Guns in Navarone, a film. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, we've only got three and a half quid. We can both go and watch this film. I said, I tell you, you take the 3.5 quid, give me my £1.50, whatever it is, and I'm going to go out. And I went to a company called Vickers, Stevens and Adams. and I got a contract that afternoon which was going to last at least 2 years. The next day, Joe said to me, "You should have come and seen that film." I said, "Well, I did something slightly different, Joe. I've got us work for the next 2 years." Oh, God, he didn't seem interested at all, really. Cut a long story short, I gave him that contract and I moved to Bristol. I went up to Bristol and I worked for...
At this point, you're running and operating your own business.
Yeah, I've been under a peace master. You don't actually work for a peace master. You work for yourself, and you just get paid for what you do.
And it's just pure. It's just flooring. Yeah. So you're you're a contractor, a part of the entire operation. Yeah.
So he moved to Bristol for a while. That didn't last long. We were selling kids' encyclopedias up there. Yeah, and earning good money at it, by the way. Yeah, because again, what I did, they had a routine whereby 10 guys would go into a big town or a big city and raid it, yeah? And every time you knocked on the door, you were supposed to do, say, 20 demonstrations a day, for which you'd give 7 or 8 demonstrations, in which you might pick up 1 or 2 orders. And I thought, this is hard work for nothing. So I left him, and I stayed with George Lewis, but I left that team, and I got a minicar, and I was going around the farmers. I'd see 4 a day, sell to 3 of them, and it was big for that time. It was big money. And selling these encyclopedias. No, you're selling the whole set. Yeah, the whole set. What was the cost? What would it be equivalent to today in today's value? You're selling these encyclopedias for 750 quid. 750 quid, and your commission. You're taking 30% on that. You're taking 20% on it. Okay, so it was big money. And you're getting, where's the distributor? You're just getting directly from Encyclopedia. I worked there. Again, you work for yourself, but you're working for George Noon's, the Encyclopedia people. So I did that for 6-7 months, got fed up with that, came back to London, and I got a job selling Hilti, ballistic fixings. What is that? They're a ballistic fixing tool for the building trade. Okay. In other words, you see the Hilti vans around here as well. They're all over the world. They took on 40 new guys, did Hilti, because they had just taken off of a company called UCAN the right to use Hilti guns in England, yeah? So again, there were 40 new guys, and again, working around and suddenly thought, this is hard work, one needs a shortcut to something. And I noticed when they told us that if you sell somebody a gun, you don't make your money on the gun, you make your money on the fixings, on the bullets and the fixings themselves, yeah? And the guns you could repair for nothing. So I used to go into the store shop and say, look, give me 2 of these, 2 of this. And I was making guns up and giving them to people, giving them to big builders, yeah? And I remember giving 6 or 7 guns to Wimpy, massive company. These guns are used for what? It's for the construction, or it's what do you mean? I don't understand that part. Okay. There's different types of guns for different purposes. And they're driven by bullets, like a gun. Yeah. Ballistic fixings, yeah? Where you need to fix into a steel beam or something, right? Ah, okay. So the actual, like, the rivet. Yeah. Okay. You'd fire it in with a ballistic. With a bullet, yeah? Yeah. So in giving these 6 or 7 to Wimpy, they then have to use your ballistic fixings because they won't fit any other thing else, right? So out of the 40 guys that they took on, after 3 or 4 weeks, I was the only one on a bonus. I was earning good money at it again because we did that. So I did that for a while, and at the same time, I still wanted to go back into flooring. So I was going to customers, which were shop fitters and builders, and giving them my card, which I called advanced flooring, for the business, yeah, knowing I was going to leave Hilti shortly anyway, which I did. And then we started off laying floors, back into flooring again. So at this point, did you feel at this point you're still chasing that security? It's not by no means necessary. You're getting by, you're paying your bills, but at this point you're not. Let's say shooting. I'm working from home. You're still working from home. Are you just getting by, or are you able to provide more at this point? Well, just getting. By this time I'd got married and I had a son. Yeah. And we were struggling. Yeah, it was still a struggle. That slowly got better and better. And the guy that I've met in the shop fitting side when I was selling to the Hilti stuff came to you one day and said, "No, there was a big group in London called the Hyde Group. They had stores all over the place, yeah, not shops, stores. Yeah, like department stores. Yeah. So one of the architects had asked him to do a job for him in Richmond, which was going to be an off-licence area where they were cutting wooden butts, beer butts down.
Yep.
And he came to me and said, no, well, I wouldn't mind doing this job, but I've got no money. Would you back me? So I said, yeah, okay. Halfway through that, the guy was enjoying the job that we were doing. These two guys that I employed to do work for me were pretty good. And the shop fitting side really started from that. Within a few years, we were employing, 20 guys in shop fitting. They're still doing the flooring.
Yep.
And that was then the start of the group of companies.
Was this the start of your shop fitting business? And from this contract, getting involved, because this guy, he needed financial backing for his stores, which you could give him proper payment terms. And essentially, now, how many stores did you initially start shop fitting, and where did that lead to?
In one big store. One big store.
Yeah.
The Hyde Group in Richmond.
Okay. And approximately, what is the size of that, like square footage?
Well, the shop itself was, let's say, 3 times bigger than your studio here. But the actual store would have been 150,000, 250,000 square feet.
Okay.
And all we were doing bits of shop fitting there, yeah. I then moved from a place called Leavesden to where we lived for a long time in Leverstock Green. And
where is this? Because I'm sure, unless you're from the UK, this might be hard to.
Okay, so I've moved out. I was living in Cricklewood still.
And where is that located?
That's where I was born, in Cricklewood.
This is Wales
Northwest, or London? No, Northwest London.
Northwest London. Okay.
And was living in a place called Melrose Avenue. We moved out of there to Leavesden, where when I bought my first house, which cost, I think, about 5,250 quid at the time. And it was a townhouse with 3 stories, rather like your staircase, winding up and down all day long. Yeah? Met some people there, just become neighbours, I guess, really. And again, one of them came to me and said, no, would you mind coming into business with me? I've got a building business, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, what for? He said, well, I just think it might be good. So we needed a factory for that. And I got a deal in St Albans on a great big factory of something like about 12,000 square feet. And bear in mind, I was working from home up till then, right? And office section as well. His son, after about a year of being with this particular guy, I won't name him, his son left college, or university I should say, took a business course. Came into me one day, and we weren't doing very good at this business because he was in the building game, not shop fitting. I was earning more money out of shop fitting. The margins were bigger in shop fitting than they were in the building trade, yeah. And his son left this university, and Eric came to me one day and said, Norman, I want to leave. I said, fine, what do you want to do? He said, well, I'm going to go with my son, because he's in business college, he knows what he's doing, and we're going to take the business with us, if you don't mind. I said, okay. I said, before you do it, I will say this to you, you're making a mistake. And remember, you'll say this one day, right? He said, oh, no, I'm okay. So him and his son left me, and I was in this great big factory now again on my own. A year later, he went skint, and he owed me money for jobs I'd done for him in his new business with his son. So I went down to his office in Rickmansworth, he was, which isn't far from St Albans, and I'm looking through his files at anything worth having because he's gone skint. And I saw a file there which was Green Shield stamps in Daventry. Daventry was Green Shield's head office for distribution, and he was supposed to build some internal offices for them, but he'd gone.
Again, shop fitting these.
Shop fitting, yeah. Well, it's part of shop fitting.
Yeah.
So I took that file and I rang the architect for Green Shield stamp, which was in Edgware, and I said, "Do you hear that Eric's gone skinny?" He said, "Oh no!" He said, "Christ!" I said, "I've just put his quote in, and he was the cheapest." I said, "Well, don't worry, I'll do it for the same money." He said, "Well, let's meet." So I met him and I said, "Look, here's the quote. It's exactly the same money, and I'll take care of things." So he said, "Good, thanks very much." So we did it, and this guy was, I shouldn't mention names, I don't think, it might not be fair to me, but he said to me one day, "Hey, this is good, Norm, it's a lovely job, and thanks very much," and I gave him a couple of grand for doing it, yeah. He said, listen, green shield stamps is really coming to an end. And Mr. Tompkins, who owned Green Shield Stamps, is moving into a thing called Argos. I said, what the hell is that? He said, it's a showroom where you get a magazine, you order what you like, and you walk in the shops. It's catalogue selling, but in the shop, right? He said, and the object is we're going to build hundreds of these things over England. Do you want to come in and be one of the 6 that tender for these works? I said, yeah. We got our first job in Argos now, in Bedford. And the deal was simple. You had 20 weeks to completely, from brand new, build a shop here.
Yep.
There was a penalty. For every week we were late, the penalty was something like about 10,000 quid a week.
Yep.
Because they were losing their business. So I said, okay, but if I finish before, I want 10,000 quid extra. So we argued over it for a few weeks and then we agreed this deal. Just as we were finishing this Bedford store, which we finished in about 16 or 17 weeks, so on top of the price that we were getting, they'd owed me 30,000 quid, yeah? Mm. The chief architect died for Argos, right? Strange circumstances of his death, and again, we won't go into that one, but anyway, he was dead. I took a second job in Watford, and we were due to open this a week after Christmas. Mm-hmm. On Christmas Eve, I had a phone call from the office to say, look, you better get down to Watford, there's a problem. When I drove into Watford, there were fire engines everywhere. Now, this store was, let's say, 10,000, 15,000 square feet, ground floor and basement, so 30,000 square feet, big shops, right? So the number of men we're now employing is growing all the time. I got there and the all these fire engines were we'd created a swimming pool in the basement. The plumber had, I was going to say fucked up, messed up, right?
The plumber
Massive big swimming pool. Jesus Christ. Now, bear in mind, the deal was if you're late, you'll never get another job off us. So the firemen finished their job, and the funny thing was, I couldn't help laughing at it. We were next door to Littlewoods, a big department store, and they had a Father Christmas there for Christmas Eve. And he was the only Father Christmas on Christmas Eve out of work because he couldn't get in his place. We'd flooded the bloody thing, yeah? Shame on him, but everywhere else. Week later, we're getting ready for this job, and it's winter time. It's snowing outside, and I've gone over to make sure everything is spotless. Right, built a beautiful job. We had good guys working for us.
So you were able to easily clear out the water from the basement.
No, the firemen took days doing that, and then we put in dehumidifiers, and we worked 24 hours a day just to get ready. Because I didn't want to be late, because that meant we've got no more work off this company. Yeah?
Wasn't the client going to be concerned with mold? I mean, this stuff cracks into the.
That didn't matter at the time.
Yeah.
So the night before we're opening, it's snowing, and I'm there making sure everything's spotlessly clean. Yeah. A guy knocks on the door, covered in snow, looked a bit scruffy actually. And I said, sorry mate, we're closed, we don't open till tomorrow. He knocked on the door again. I said, I just told you we're not open yet, we're open in the morning. He walked away, he came back and knocked again. I said, would you fuck off and leave me alone? I'm trying to get... He knocked on the door again, and with that, the architect came out. He said, that's our chairman. I went, oh, fucking hell. So he walked in, wet feet, right across this beautiful floor I've just been cleaning and all that sort of business, yeah. He said, were you Norman Lynch? I went, yeah. He said, I heard you were an arrogant bee. I said, yeah, I've heard something about you as well. And off he went and looking around the shop, and he came out, he said, you're going to be ready, aren't you? I said, yep. He said, fancy a beer? I said, yeah. So the two of us alone went for a beer. And we became very good friends, very, very quickly. We built for Argos. We worked for Argos for 19 years. And we were building these shops all over the place. And that was where the company really started coming together. Mm-hmm. Stories I shouldn't really tell you. I could tell you another time, but not in front of cameras, yeah?
Don't worry, no one's watching.
Yeah, they fucking might be.
Maybe in 10 years. Don't worry about it.
Well, he's dead now, so I can talk about him. And he said to me one day, Norman, our chief architect, he committed suicide. I said, yeah, I know. He said, and this is a massive program we're doing. For some reason, Tom McCall, if that was the chairman's name, and I got on very, very well together. They were Irishman, and was rated at that time to be possibly the best retailer in England. So he met one day in a boozer, and he said to me, look, I'm bringing my missus. Have you got one? I said, yeah. He said, why don't you bring along with an evening now? I want to talk to you about something. And we were discussing what was going to go ahead with Argus and stuff of that sort of nature. We met regularly, and he then rang me one day and he said, Norman, these quotes are coming in, and this is typical of the building trade. Let's say you get a figure of 750,000 for an identical job, or supposed to be identical job. Another job is $1 million, and the variance was massive. He said, I can retail, but I can't control the capital spending. It's crazy. Can you tell me what I can do? I said, what, tonight? He went, yeah. I said, could you tell me how to retail tonight? He went, no, it's complicated, it takes years. I said, so is capital spending, it takes years. He said, can you control it for us? I said, yeah. We need to put certain things into place, which we did. How long would it take to get into a reasonable, say, a 5%, 10% on either side of the scale? And within 3 months, we got that working properly. Without telling them what we did what we did, and it was good what we did. And we worked there 19 years, and I used to sit down with Tom McCall quite often looking at the capital expenditure and to keep that capital expenditure under control that was viable for them, yeah? Everyone they employed on their board was, in fact, a retailer of one form or another, other than the estates manager. But he was only short-lived in the board anyway. So we worked there for 19 years, and we started doing all bigger contracts and all that sort of thing.
At this point, you're running your own business. You have your own shop fitting factory with how many employees at this stage?
At the early stage of Argus, let's say we had by then 30 or 40.
Yeah.
We then moved into larger premises again. Oh, and by the way, let me go back on a story. So when Eric Fortune went skint, and I picked up this contract with Green Shield, he started another business where he was working with a company called Umdash. And he came back to me again and said, sorry about what happened before, let's get together again. So I give him a job working with us, or on one division only, because I had several divisions by then, right? And he said to me one day, we started working together, him running his division under my wing, yeah? And he said to me one day, I never understand, Norman, I did the dirty on you. I took all the business into much cheaper overheads, left you with expensive overheads and very little business. How did you survive and I didn't? I said, well, do you remember when I said to you, you're making a mistake? He said, yeah, but why? I said, because the moment you moved out, I didn't need that fucking big factory, and I sold the lease for 150,000 quid. He went, oh, Jesus. He was slightly upset about it, yeah. And that 150,000 was what allowed me to start really ploughing some money back into the appeals group, as it was then, right? And we had Advanced Flooring was in part of the group, but the group was called Appeals.
And what would have that 150 back then? It must have been worth maybe not $1 million. No.
Half a million quid.
Half a million.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But it was enough to get us.
At this point, it's giving you cash flow. You're more flexible. You can kind of.
Then we need bigger premises, and
Yeah.
we needed to build now a proper workshop, yeah, which we had in Luton, which was again a big one, 50,000 square feet, something of that nature. But more importantly, we had an empty shell by our side that we could rent, which was 100,000 square feet, because we started building units in there and sending them all around the world, yeah. We were talking yesterday to Bruce about Watson's. We were building Watson's chemists at one time for Singapore, building them in Luton.
And shipping them over.
Making sure they all fitted and send them over. We built a studio, massive studio, not like this, a sound studio for Eddie Grant.
Yep.
sent out to Barbados or wherever he lived. And the company was growing. By now we had maybe in excess, we were building up to only several hundred people, approaching 1,000 people, yeah. It was a good business, but cash flow was bad in them days. The big companies just wouldn't pay you. And what
were their payment terms? Was there like a 50% down, or were they giving you like net 90 on the final?
This wasn't Thailand. This was England, and you got no deposit at all. You put in applications as the job went on for your money, and it's those applications that would feed on. But what happened also in the late 80s, there was a big money crunch under Maggie Thatcher, and the profitability was reduced terribly. When I started in shop fitting, we could get 25% profit. 10, 15 years later, you're lucky to get 2.5% profit. It was getting really, really tight. So I decided to move into property development. And I saw a thing in the paper, a property developer had just gone skint. And I had an office for the flooring company in Northwood. And just beside North, there was an old barn that was falling down. And I bought it. I bought it off him for 19,000 cash, because he was going skint. He wanted the money here. I spent about 150 grand on it, and sold it then for 450 grand.
And it was an old barn. What were you turning it
into offices?
Into offices.
And I leased it to a company called Boise Cascade. Boise Cascade is actually a town in America, and all they do is wood products. They grow the forests, they chop the trees down, and they make everything you can imagine out of timber. Mm-hmm. I sold that then for 450 grand to a pension fund that was a joint pension fund between Benskin's Brewery and Vauxhall Motors. They bought it. Yeah. Just as we were about to sign the contract for that, the agent acting for me arranged the meeting with the pension funds, me, him, and he said, "Look, Norman, I've got to tell you this. I know we're about to sign, but somebody's offered you 50 grand more." I said, "No, we've done the deal. The deal is the deal, and we can sign it now." And I'll tell you that because it's relevant to something that happens a long time later. Yeah? So we did it, and we carried on then. I bought another site down in Beckenham, where we built offices down there, and this side started to grow.
So at this point, it went from you're in the building material side, you're in flooring, which led to shop fitting. You've reached nearly 1,000 employees that are now doing your shop fitting. That could be anything from admin to QC to laborers to people in the factory.
A lot,
right? Logistics and accounting. It's the whole shebang. And then from there, you're doing this shop fitting that grew from Argos. Just to kind of recap the whole story, which probably say what times 10 times 100 the business essentially. And then from this shop fitting, you decided, you know what, let's get into the property development side. So the point of why I'm recapping that is, at this point when you're doing the property development, are you also doing the shop fitting? You're doing both? Okay.
Oh, yeah, doing both.
Okay.
By then we had maybe 7 or 8 companies, which was also great. Each division had a CEO, so he looked after it properly. I mean, for instance, we were approached by a company from Edinburgh that said, "Look, we haven't got enough work. Can you buy us? Do you want to buy us?" So I went up there. They had a terrific workshop, which we needed to get on. So we ended up buying that company. And the first contract we signed after that was the big retailer for books in England. What's he called? Weatherstones. We did the first 50 Weatherstones. And they manufactured all the goods up in Edinburgh, shipped them down, and we've refitted the shops down there. So we did all stuff like that. And by then we were working for lots of companies. So
you're still doing the shop fitting and the property development, and it's simultaneous. What was your role at this stage? Are you overseeing all the operations of all the divisions?
Yeah.
And
each one, for instance, the guy that came to that went skint, he then was going bankrupt again for the second or third time.
Do you want me to pass you a drink? Or you?
No, I'm all right.
All right.
So and just before he told me this, he said, look, he was working with this company called Undash. They're the largest modular shop fitters in the world at that stage. We'd arranged to go over and see them because he owed them money. And again, the morning we were going, he said, I'm not going. He said, I'm keeping it. I'm going on my own. I said, I'm going to Undash today. And if you don't come with me, I'll take the business off you. Mm. He said, you won't, because they won't have it. So I flew to Austria, Amstetten.
To Austria?
Yeah.
This is where Umdash is?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
Austrian company. Yeah.
Okay.
Place called Umdash. The company called Umdash in Amstetten. So I said to the German, look, owes you money, he's got no money. I want to take the business over. So he's listening. He said, no, I'll tell you what I'll do. The money he owes you, you're not going to get. He hasn't got it. I'll write you out a cheque now. So we went for dinner, typical Austrian-style dinner, very good food. We ended the day, he said, Norman, business is yours. So we now have a joint venture partnership going, which the lawyers tied up, with the largest modular shop fitting company. When I say modular, there's two types of shop fitting, basically, right? Modular, where you build a hotel, and the reception area and the restaurants are unique to that particular thing, right? The bedrooms, however, are all modular.
Just cabinets,
all that stuff.
You're just sliding. It kind of, is it almost even IKEA style where you're putting it together, sliding it in, or is it already coming?
Everything's made to a certain size. Yeah?
Okay.
And that's how we do it.
Yeah.
So that was another company we were doing.
But that you must face some issues with maybe getting it through certain door sizes, getting on an elevators, especially if you're bringing large, let's say, wardrobes into the 10th floor of a hotel.
It all comes as packages and you assemble it on site.
Okay.
Yeah. It's quite simple, really. But it wasn't. It's all very complicated. But right now we're growing all the time, yeah?
Yeah.
And we were doing work with Selfridges. When the bomb went off in Selfridges, the early morning bomb went off at 6 o'clock in the morning. By 9 o'clock in the morning, we had men down there.
What is the, early morning bomb?
A bomb. The IRA was still prevalent at the time.
Okay.
And they blew Harrods up. They blew a section of Harrods up.
Okay.
Harrods is 1 million square feet, but they blew a section up on the main road. So we helped put that right, and we were doing a lot of work by then for Harrods anyway on different areas and stuff, yeah. So the whole business was growing, and I was really now concentrating on the development side, because as I went round the shop fit, one of the directors said to me at one of the board meetings, Norman, you've got to start sacking these people. I said, they're no fucking good. He said, I know, but they're the best we can get. You're sacking them quicker than I can employ them. So give me half a chance, would you? I said, all right, and I was getting more interested in the development side where there was proper money anyway, yeah. And we did, some soft offices in the West End. We did development in the West End. I then bought a site that we called Syntech, which was from early stages saying the barn was about 4,000 square feet. Syntech was 150,000 square feet, 200,000 square feet, yeah. Up until the time the last one I ever bought was Houghton Hall Park, which was 650,000 square feet.
So you're buying these properties, you're fitting them, and then they're sites, and then you're leasing them out to businesses.
They're greenfield sites.
Yeah.
We build a building, the idea is rent them out to people. But then the crash of 90, after I bought this Houghton Hall Park, took us about 18 months. And the reason the story earlier on was relevant about the barn, Houghton Hall Park was owned by the same two pension funds, Benskins and Vauxhall Motors. And it was the guy from Benskins Brewery that said to our agent that we still had, what Norman did all them years ago, I want him to try and win this if he can. Now, it was big. As a finished product, the 650,000 square feet would have been worth, 700-800 million quid, yeah? And first of all, I thought it's going to be tricky because the biggest developers in England were after it as well. I put my scheme forward. We employed a good team of architects, a good team of quantity surveyors and everyone else around us who were now working for us anyway, yeah. And I was getting fed back little snippets of information that was very handy for us. Off the one man for the story.
To understand how to quote correctly.
No, that we knew. We employed our own QSs by then and all sorts of things, yeah. The company was now 1,500 strong, yeah. No, it simply wanted to look after the area. In other words, he had a style of building he had in mind. He didn't want to ruin it, you know, because Houghton Hall Park is a mansion. So he gave me hints as to what might look nice. You understand?
Yeah.
For instance, when we bought it eventually, we won the tender, yeah. We put a reflective pond in, which is about 150 foot long, and it reflected Houghton Hall Park itself, the house, the mansion, yeah. And we built around that, so that was quite good. But then the crash came in '91. We got slaughtered, absolutely slaughtered.
So let's talk about that, because we had that conversation before. I think it's quite interesting, and we can explain how that crash affected you. But I'm going to, and I don't think we dug too deep into it, but I'm assuming it's because you have taken out loans and you're financing this property development, so you're relying on certain interest rates, and if those go too high, you can go skin it. So this is kind of the story and what happened exactly?
A short period of time.
And again, this is the early, what year are we talking?
We're talking about late 80s now.
Late 80s.
Late 80s.
Yeah, so explain that more in detail, how that affected everyone and how it's still affecting people today.
It affected a lot of people. The interest rate in a short period went from 3% to its very maximum of just under 18%. But settled for a while at 15%, for a long time at 15%. This meant our gearing at the time was about 45%, so loan to value. The biggest developers in the industry at that time, their gearing would be 85, 95%, so our gearing was pretty low. But we weren't a public company. And in fact, I'd made moves. I was approached by brokers to take the company public 2 years earlier. There was no SPACs then, and to launch a company onto the public market in England took a long, long time. It would have taken about at least 2.5 to 3 years to get us on the market, yeah? Mm-hmm. And we were in the process of that. When we were also approached by John Lang's, which was a massive company, much bigger than us, so tens of thousands of employees wanted to buy us. And we were tossing around. It took longer than maybe it should have done to organise the company going public, because of
have a sit, don't worry.
Choice maybe of selling out to John Lang.
That part we can. It's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, don't worry. If you're slouching too, you can fix yourself up, because it's not live, so we can.
Yeah, edit it.
It's like a quick cut. He knows what to do.
Yes, it's a free flow. It's okay.
Yeah,
it's a bit what?
It's just free
flow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's so long. It's we try to make it's just a natural conversation. So if people are moving around, I mean, that's normal. What do they?
The
what
internet
do you expect?
nowadays, they don't care about these things.
So
the interest rate killed a lot of people, and this is when Maggie Thatcher did something which have affected. Forget me, I was in business, and you're at risk all the time. Yeah. She sold off the council houses. Council houses were houses. I was born in a council house.
Yeah, so government housing.
Government housing, where the rents were controlled. They were cheap and they were controlled. She sold them all off to ownerships at a discount price. I bought our house, gave it to my mother. We had a 40% discount, which that part of it was great. The mistake she made where the man in the street was concerned, bear in mind she was selling tens of thousands of these houses, right? She put an embargo on the councils that they couldn't use the money that they got from the sale to build more. Her object was that if you're a house owner, you're part of the capitalist society and you'll vote for Tories opposed to Labour. Yeah? What she should have done, which she didn't do, which was a major mistake, And bear in mind, when she was selling these off, the interest rates were low, 2.5%, 3%. Suddenly they're 15%, and people couldn't afford them. And they didn't understand the liability of a mortgage. So they were going into the estate agents and giving the keys back, which is a bigger mistake again, because the bank now could sell them for whatever they want to sell it for. You now owe the balance of your mortgage. Mm. People were going bankrupt because of it, and they're still suffering today because of that.
And that's trickling down through maybe that those families' generations, and that debt's being passed to their sons and their daughters.
Well, no, I mean, once you're dead, you're dead. I mean, they can't pass the debt down. No, they can't do that. But I mean, a lot of people are still alive that had that problem, yeah, and maybe never recovered from it again.
And we did discuss that, but I thought that was quite interesting. That I asked you this question before. I said, why did she do that? And your answer was, she's not a businesswoman. She has no idea what she's doing.
It wasn't that. She's a politician.
Yeah.
And what she wanted, her idea was, if these people are capitalists now, they'll vote Tory as opposed to Labour. Mm. I don't think she was right on that at all. And although everybody thought she was a great Prime Minister, I thought she made some massive mistakes. She put the likes of me and a lot of people like me, we wasted 20 years of our life going bankrupt at that time. I didn't actually go bankrupt. It was quite a big company at that time, so there were 4 or 5 receivers involved, official receivers and private receivers. Not one of them accused any of the directors of my company of doing anything wrong. At that stage, when we went down, we had 17 directors. They all left. I've got all the responsibilities of the money we owe the banks and sorting out with receivers, and everyone else is gone.
At this point, are the doors closed? Mm. Because you just don't have the cash flow to keep the operation running. Can't keep it open. And prior to that, I mean, your company was doing the best that it was ever doing. I mean, you're doing property development. You're doing the shop fitting for that. You're buying the land, building the buildings, and leasing it out to companies. Mm. They need to pay you back. At that point, how does that part of the operation work? Where are you're giving the buildings back to the bank because you can no longer afford those interest rates?
Things happen, and it's strange how it backfires on you. To buy Houghton Hall Park, it cost me $19.5 million, and I needed to borrow that. Yeah. And I was doing business at the time with First Interstate of California. They wanted the loan. They wanted the deal, right? We needed to produce a road bond. And because First Interstate was an American bank, they couldn't give a road bond in England. Mm-hmm. So our lawyers sent the documentation on the deal to Lloyds Bank, asking for a road bond, because the manager at Lloyds in Piccadilly had come to me and asked me for business. Right? We were growing.
Well, let's explain. I have an idea of what I've dealt with surety bonds, but I have an idea of a road bond. That's basically saying, like, you've won the project. The project's let's call it $10 million for to make it simpler. But you got to put down 1% of that $10 million, and if you don't build it, the bank holds it. It's kind of like in an account.
No. A road bond is quite simple. A bank guarantees the cost of putting roads into Houghton Hall Park was £800,000 at the time, right? So the bond was for $800,000, because if you're selling a site at the end of selling a building at the end of the site, he's got to know he can get access to it. And if anything goes wrong before the roads are built, the bank's got the $800,000 to finish the road.
Okay.
So that's what it was for. Yeah.
Understood. Yeah.
Instead of just giving me the $800,000, I was at hairdresser's one morning, having my hair done, right? And the manager, Ian, rang me from Lloyds Bank, said, "Norman, I've got the money." I said, "Ian, what are you doing? I'm soaking. Wait, having my haircut." You know? He said, "Well, I thought you wanted to know. I've got 40 million for you." I said, "I haven't asked you for 40 million. I've asked just for 800,000. He said, "No, I've got the whole loan." I said, "Oh, Jesus." All right, so we go down to see him and we're all arranging it. And had I not accepted that, and the reason I accepted it, The interest rate was the same, because the interest rate from First State of California was on the paperwork. What wasn't on the paperwork was the cost of putting the loan into place. They wanted 650,000 quid in First Interstate. So Ian said to me, how much is it to put the loan in place? I said, 150 grand. Got it. So I earned $500,000 there, just sitting on the hairdressers that day, which was nice, yeah. Very pleasant. So we, but that was the main problem that put us into trouble earlier on. When we first won the contract, and we paid $19.5 million for it.
But you got the $40 million loan.
Yeah,
at this point.
That was for other things as well.
Not just for the property
because
development.
we had finished other projects, and what they did, this was an open project. We hadn't started building yet, so they wanted better security. So we gave them other buildings, and they took the loan out on that as well.
Understood.
Yeah.
At that time, again, the interest is 1-2% ish. Okay.
Oh, it's pretty low, yeah.
Yes.
So the day we won, bear in mind we'd been working on this tender for 18 months or so, over a year anyway. And I'd seen a mistake in the planning permission. And nobody said a word for over a year. We got awarded the contract one evening, and all our team, which is a big team of architects, quantity surveyors and all that sort of stuff, electricians, we were meeting at 10 o'clock in the city. Instead of going to the city, I went back to Dunstable, where Houghton Hall Park was. And the chief planning officer was, again, another Welshman with a cleft.
Yeah, cleft palate.
Yeah, cleft palate.
Yeah.
And he said, "Hello, Mr. Lynch, heard you won. I'm glad you got it, it's good." I said, "Thanks very much. I've got a problem." He said, "What's the problem?" I gave him the planning permission. I said, "Read section so-and-so." And he went, "Oh, fucking hell." All it said, "This is planning permission, blah, 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 for 650,000 square feet." Doesn't sound a problem, does it? But it is. Is it net or gross? Each square foot you build is worth money. So I said to him, I want it to be net, which allows me to add another 15% on to the gross. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of 650,000 square feet, it's 750,000 square feet. That was worth another value at that stage, another 6.5 million quid. Now, the day we bought it for 19.5, St Quintin's valued it for Lloyd's Bank at 32 million. So that day, the day before, I done 13 million. The next day, you can add another 6.5 million to that, 19.5 million. Yeah.
And the client, the buyer at this point, they can make that decision to not take the additional square footage, or
No. I bought it.
Yeah,
I own it. And I'm saying to the planning office, you've made a mistake. You said it's 650,000 square feet. Now, I've always read that as net, and they went, I knew it wasn't.
Yeah, and then so people understand, when you're going from net to gross, you're legally allowed to add 15%.
No, they made a mistake. So he called it the practicing lawyer in for the government, yeah? And he said, "You've dropped a goolie." He said, "Jesus Christ, what am I going to do?" I said, "Make it gross, make it net, I mean."
Yeah.
And I'll add the gross on. They had no choice. They didn't want it advertised, did they? So they gave me a new sheet that very morning with the right...
Yeah, and the guy that wrote the tender, he's not going to throw his credibility under the bus either. He'll just, okay, yeah, that's what we meant. Okay.
So I drive into London, and I'm 3 hours late for the meeting. I walk in, and the major said, "I'm very surprised on a morning like this that you're that late." I said, "There's a good reason for it, that not one of you have picked up." He said, "What's that?" Handed the paper around, and bloody hell, didn't see it, never saw it. I said, "Don't worry, it's a great day. We just earned another 6.5 million quid. Thanks very much, I'm happy."
Yeah.
Now let's carry on with the meeting. And but then, of course, say some years later, about 3 years later, we'd built 2 buildings. And this, the bad thing about business generally is banks. They're not very trustworthy.
One sec. Maybe tilt that a bit towards you. I think it's just the direction. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You can't trust them. I classify them now as robbers in pinstripe suits. When things go wrong, they really go wrong. Because even though we were in big trouble, a German bank came to me, knew of our business, because it was public, didn't matter, they knew what we were doing, and made an offer through me to Lloyds Bank, which Lloyds Bank rejected. Had they not done that, had they accepted the offer, our business would have carried on. We were in strong shape, we really were, yeah. But to demand your money on the spot, you can't do it. Not in the development world. It takes years to get these things. It can take you 3, 4, 5 years to get a planning permission.
Yep.
So to demand money straight away is an impossible task. And I just don't trust banks anymore.
And at this point, this was kind of what led to your demise of the company, because you've taken out this 40 million at such a low interest rate. What year did this happen? So this would have been late 80s.
91.
And then which year you made the deal in 91, and then
That
was
40
it
million,
months
that
later?
40 million was only for that particular group of stuff.
Correct, but you still have that at that interest rate. And are you talking about 6 months later, a year later, when those interest rates shot up to 15%?
Talking about 3 years later.
3 years later. And at that point, does that happen overnight where you need to close the doors, or is it that quick where you're so fucked? I mean, essentially.
It only takes one bank, and bear in mind, at that time we had 6 or 7, 8 accounts maybe in different banks, yeah? For instance, NatWest we had a loan off NatWest, an overdraft. Something like about 2.8 million, 1.8 million. We had a meeting with our lawyers at NatWest. They were kicking up. And they said, Norman, if you can give us $1 million by Friday, we won't do anything about it. Friday, I made sure they had $1 million taken off the overdraft, yeah?
Yep.
Monday morning, they called the receivers in on us. That's how banks are dirty devils. Never trust them.
So what are your options at those stage if you can't trust the banks? Like what would you do differently in that situation if you were to look back on it in 91? Like what could have saved your ass then?
What could have saved it? Not a lot, because the interest on everything we were doing, the interest rates were so high, we couldn't afford it anymore.
So even forget about the 40 million, your business in general would have been screwed just because of the interest rates alone.
At that time, loan to value, I personally was 140 million. That's what we'd built up. And we lost a lot. It all went. In a matter of 3 months, say, people start winding you up. Debts are being called in.
And this is from Maggie Thatcher.
Yeah.
That's all from her. So you're running a bit, at this point you have, 1,000 employees? Now,
closer to
2,000, but all these people, they're out of work now, right? So not only did she affect the people that purchased council housing, but all the people with businesses that had to shut down shop. Were there other businesses similar to yourselves that had to close the doors as well?
Oh, yeah, lots of them. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So how many people do you think went unemployed from this interest rate issue?
I don't know. I mean, I was too interested. I had to sell my houses. I had houses.
Yeah, you're too focused on yourself.
Yeah, you're selling everything.
But if you were to guess a number, are you talking like 1 million people, 500,000 people lost their job directly from this interest rate issue?
In fact, a little story. I phoned my accountant one day. I said, John, there's loads of problems going on. He said, Norman, sell everything. I said, well, let's meet. And he said, I can't. I'm on my way to the airport now and I ain't coming back again. And he didn't. I never saw him again after that.
Where did he go? You don't know?
Yeah, he was Israel.
Oh, okay.
He was a good Jewish boy.
Yeah.
Knew his stuff. Never came back again.
That was the end of that.
Yeah. I sold my house, 2 houses, 3 houses. Moved into a rented house in...
yeah, so at this point you got to close the
everything's gone.
And what's going through your mind when all this is happening? Is it beyond the stress? I mean, are you thinking next steps? Like, what is your next move? What's going on? What was going on with you?
I was still working, if you like, hand in hand with the banks, seeing what we could save from it, yeah?
Yeah.
We had an offer from a German bank, and the offer was quite simple. Don't wind the business up. Mr. Barclays, Lloyds, NatWest, whoever. Leave it as it is. We will give you hold the security. We will finance appeals, my business, to finish all these deals off. You're still holding the security, remember? And when we sell it, will be a three-way split between you, the German bank, and appeals. Lloyds Bank said no.
Mm.
Now, the difference is this. On Houghton Hall Park alone, they would have received something like about 7 or 8 million. And they still had a share of the profits when the deal was finished, which would have been another 20, 30, Christ, that would have been another 50 million, yeah? They said no. 3 years later, and bear in mind that 50 million would have been just Houghton Hall Park, there were the other sites that we had as well, right? 3 years later, Lloyd sold that site to Wimpy's for 3.5 million. So something that 3 years earlier was worth 36 million. I'd built 2 buildings on it, one for Boots Pension Fund and one for a company abroad called Holtz Garden Schultz, which would have reduced the value of the site down by from 36 to about 33 million. So 33 million, and 2 years later they sold it to Wimpy's for 3.5 million.
Mm. So these banks, I mean, they're selling property at an undervaluation. They just don't care. They just want the cash and then be done with it.
It didn't matter to them. I'll tell you for why. Because at that time, the banks were suffering so much. No one expected them to make a profit, and they weren't. They were writing these figures down. And the funny thing was, because I traced this through Lloyds Bank, obviously, because it's personal to me. So that's 2 or 3 years, nobody made any money. The banks weren't making money at all. The returns were terrible. 3 years later, when they sold that site, they put it in as a profit, 3.5 million profit. They'd lost 37 million.
But then they
But that
call it a
3.5
profit.
million is profit, yeah. And that's why it's... In the development world, everybody has to borrow money. It's a big money game, yeah. Our gearing was 45%. The norm was more like 85, 95%. And we were still in trouble. Only because if I'd gone public, then I could have put more funds on the market, sold more shares, and got out of trouble that way. So you reached a stage where I was unlucky. When we were going to go public, and we were forming, and we'd had our meetings for 12, 18 months with the press and all that sort of business, yeah? You know, the way you build it up.
Yep.
Had we not had the offer from John Lang, that would have speeded it up, we would have been all right. So it's circumstances as well.
A lot of your competitors that survived this interest rate issue, were they public at the time, and that's what kind of kept them
If they were public, I mean, for instance, the likes of Wimpy, they were suffering. John Lang's was suffering. Everybody was suffering. Nobody could pay bills anymore. It just got ridiculous.
How long did that go on for before things settled down?
2, 3 years.
2, 3 years. And was there like an outcry from the businesses to
jeez, yeah, I mean, it's terrible. And the other thing was, in them days, the bigger companies, which is also making it hard for smaller companies to survive, the bigger companies were never paying on time either.
But what was the agenda? Because it sounds like at the end of the day, the winners were the banks.
Too big to fail.
Hmm?
Too big to fail. You've heard that now in your lifetime, right? And it was the same in them days.
Yeah.
Too big to fail. And then what they did, which companies weren't allowed to do, I call it, they had a dirty bank and a good bank. The bad bank and the good bank. Do you remember that?
No.
They're in trouble. And let's say they've got bad assets worth 600 million. They've got good assets worth $1 billion rather, right? Form 2 banks. One bank takes the bad stuff, and the other bank takes the good stuff.
And they did this.
They did it. They did it. They did it years later.
An example of a bank that did that, and they split, and who did they become?
You look it up, you see it. They're called them good banks and bad banks. And maybe slowly they'd pay that debt down somehow or write it off, I don't know.
They're just trimming off the fat and
Now, I wouldn't be allowed to do that. The receivers wouldn't let me do that. Say, well, look, Lloyd's have got trouble, so take that. It's a bad bank, but we've got lots of good stuff, and we keep the good stuff, like hell.
Why do you think they can do that, these banks? Is it because they're working all together anyways?
Of course it is. Too big to fail. And it was the end of a nice story.
So, and I think everyone's aware of the banks, and I mean, we've seen that from the crash in 2008 with the real estate market. I mean, they're all in bed with each other. They can't fail. At this point in 1990, the company's gone skin. You're planning your next move.
Well, for 3 years, I worked with the banks and the receivers.
Just trying to figure shit out.
Yeah. And then we start with the inland revenue. One of the last debts I paid was $1.25 million for VAT. I went through an IVA. Didn't go bankrupt, went through an IVA. And we owed the inland revenue $125,000. I mean, nothing in the overall picture, yeah? And they chased me for 5-6 years. And at one stage, they put a demand on. Bear in mind, I went in 91. So 3 years later, I've been working with the banks, trying to sort things out, giving help with the receivers wherever I could. And I earned nothing. They put a demand on me for £868,000 tax bill. And I said to this guy at one of the meetings, where do you get this figure from? He said, well, we think it's what you're capable of earning. I said, you're absolutely right. And I'll do it again. And I'll see you don't see a penny of it. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but that was the way I felt at the time.
And demand, is this meaning you're going to have to pay it at some point in your life, even if you've gone bankrupt? Or
No, we eventually settled 3-4 years after that.
Yeah.
For about $28,000. And even then, I didn't know that. I didn't work, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
I'd lost money.
So these 3 years, you're dealing with the bank, you're dealing with accounts
Receivers.
Account receivers who you need to pay off, clients that you owe money to.
No, we don't pay them off. They take the assets.
Ah, okay.
Now they're in charge of the assets. So they make sure that...
So
let me tell you what they do first. They take their money first.
Yeah.
And then they sell other things off.
But they've taken all your buildings, all your assets completely. They're
Everything.
trying to sell that off. Everything. And at this point, we'll jump a bit ahead, and I think this is an interesting part of the story. I'll let you tell it so I don't give it away. So you've moved into this house, and who are you living with? And let's talk about that a little bit, because I think it's quite interesting.
I moved in. I rented the house from a friend of mine.
Yeah.
I thought he owned it, but he didn't. He had just got married, and he went to Ibiza, or somewhere like that anyway. So I paid him 2 years rent up front. Yeah. And I'm sitting there with my girlfriend one day in this little house in Fulham, Pastors Green actually. And there's a knock on the door. And there's an old woman there with a guy. And she said, can I come in? I said, why? Are you not feeling well, love? She said, no, this is my house. I said, come in. I don't think so. It's so-and-so's house. Again, I won't mention his name.
Yeah.
She said, he's my nephew. It's my house. He only rents it. I said, really? So the guy that she was with turned a bit on. She said, you've got to go. You've got to leave. I said, I've paid rent for 2 years and I'm staying here. He said, I don't think so. You'll be gone in a week. I said, well, wait and see. He couldn't get rid of me because I was a protected tenant, believe it or not. Yeah? Although I'd only been there a short while. I was, in them days, a protected tenant. So I stayed there for the 2 years. I paid the rent. He realised the other nephew that he was going to lose. He couldn't get me out. And not only was I protected tenant, but under that law, he has to give me a discount on when I buy it. So I bought the house and got a 40% discount on it, which was very nice. Stayed there for 19 years. Sold it for a couple of minutes. Good.
This house? No, at this point, you were telling me that you started to live with another guy. This is a different. This is before that or after that?
Oh no! Are you talking about Simon?
Yeah.
This was just a went skint. That's going back. A few
Okay.
years. He also had a financial problem at the time.
So he was living in this house, or it's a different?
No. I was living in Parsons Green.
Okay.
Simon Cowell was one of those that suffered with the mortgage rate going up. You couldn't afford. I mean, you can't. If you're paying, let's say, 3% is £100 a month, you suddenly can't pay £600 a month. You haven't got it coming in.
So let's explain that a bit more in case it slipped by. You're living with the Simon Cowell.
No. I was living in a house in Parsons Green on my own.
Correct.
He had a house just down the road, in New Kings Road.
Yes.
Off of New Kings Road. He had to get out of his house.
Mm.
So I'd met Simon before through his brother, Nicholas. I knew Nicholas because of his wife and my girlfriend. They were dancers and they knew each other. So when times were good, I knew Nicholas for ages. But when it all went sour, he suffered as well because his business went down the Swanee as well. So we started to... we got together for a while, yeah. And it was quite funny. I mean, yeah, it was fun. It was a good time. Well, it was a sad time in some ways. We had funny moments in it, you know. Mm. And we started, for a while, lived in Simon and Nicholas's mother's house. So she had a beautiful house in St John's Wood. And for a short while, we lived in the ground floor flat. And just light-hearted stories sometime. We're skint. And we're going to go round to to a Pizza Express round the corner. 4 of us to have something to eat, yeah? And I've got a couple of quid on me, that's all. Yeah? Simon rolls up in a taxi. He said, "You got any money?" I went, "Yeah." He said, "I'll give us that £5. Give it to the taxi driver." I said to him, "That was for the pizza." He went, "We've got to find..." Anyway, we found someone who had a pizza together. Mm. But it was comical because one night we have a friend come over to see us. He's a little actor guy, lovely guy, good friend of mine, Mark, good actor. And as he's leaving to go back home, he sits in the back of a taxi. Simon opened the back door and gave him a kiss on the lips. He said, good night, darling. It's the way he had years, yeah?
Yeah.
Little Mark said to me the next day, "Worst taxi driver I've ever had in my life. That guy was calling me a queer all the way home." It was a good time. It was funny because many stories that I won't tell. But it was good. And I lived in this house, and Simon was working around the corner for NBC, record people. And he was always a very clever guy, Simon. Knew exactly what he was doing. I admire him greatly for what he's done, and good luck to him. He's earned.
So how long were you guys in contact? You were pretty close for a year, or?
Couple of years.
Couple of years.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And you also mentioned that he wrote a book, and he mentioned you in the book as well, didn't he?
I don't think he did he?
Well,
I don't think he's written a book, has he?
I thought he's written a book. I think you were saying something like this. He didn't mention you specifically, but maybe some stories.
Hmm.
Okay, so at this point, we're getting still into the early 90s, early 92, 93. What was the next move for you to kind of bring it all back?
That's still alive, and that's why I can't go that further. Because things are still
we
current.
won't get into the 2000s, but I mean prior to, let's call it, like, what do we call it? Like your comeback in business and getting back to where you were, and maybe what you did or what were the steps that you took to make that happen.
Somebody approached me. He was in... it was possible he was going to end up going to prison for something. Mm. And he said, look, I've got these things on the go. If I do end up in Nick, could you look after them for me? And we'll get together as a business proposition. Because I think I've done something silly, right? So we got together and we're talking about certain things we can do. He gets his... he didn't get prison sentence. He got away with it. But it must have been near the bone for him to admit that he might well end up there, yeah? So we went to Manchester one day together, no money, to buy a business. Went to PricewaterhouseCoopers to buy a computer business. Now, you know I've got iron with computers, right? So at the very end, we were talking to these two guys that owned the business in Manchester, in Pricewaterhouse office. And they obviously twigged we knew nothing about computers. And they said, no, we're not doing it. So we had a nice lunch and we're leaving the offices. And the guy from Pricewaterhouse said, tell you it is for sale, if you're interested. Some petrol filling stations. Mm. And it was from that little thing there that we grew into something that happened.
From these so it's getting back into development, and you're purchasing these petrol stations, and we talked about.
I couldn't purchase them. I had no money.
You were talking about you were dealing with airspace. Are you allowed to talk about that?
Not really. So it was difficult because we had no money.
Mm.
No, I can't talk about that part of it.
That part
that could get me into trouble.
The commercial side, what we've talked about before, you're not allowed to. Okay, well, I'll keep those stories for myself. Mm. But maybe a couple people they need to.
It's been good. I mean, everyone's got to do what they can do. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the fight isn't yet over.
No. You're still fighting. You're doing fine.
No, it's good. I mean, I'm not bothered at all. It's fine.
So what? When did you first come to Thailand? When did you first come to Phuket?
I came in 2020.
2020.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's been 20 years now, right? No, sorry.
Oh, 2000. I was going to say
2000. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, maybe there's something else we can't talk about. You came in 2000.
To be honest, there's a little story I could tell you. That's the truth.
Yeah.
I'd gone to France for the weekend to see a girlfriend. And we had a beautiful day on the beach. We went to a place in Cannes, to a beautiful restaurant with friends of mine who owned a hotel called the Royal, with this girl I'd met. Beautiful meal. Went back to the hotel, had a lovely time. Next morning I felt chest pain. And I said to John who owned the Royal, I need a chemist shop. He said, they're closed on a weekend, but we can go to a clinic. So I went to the clinic and I said to the guy, I just need some digestion tablets. He said, what for? I said, I got all pain here. He said, take your shirt off. I said, you're not gay, are you? He said, no, I'm not gay. Just take your shirt off. And you put these things on me. He said, you got a problem. Anyway, and cut a long story short, I ended up in hospital. The girlfriend's still in the hotel in bed. And I rang her to say, look, I'm in hospital. I've got a problem with my heart.
What'd you do to me last night?
She said, John's in hospital with a heart attack. I said, no, me. She said, was I that good last night? I said, you must have been. So I stayed there for 10 days, Frank.
You had a heart attack, or
no? I had a. I didn't know what it was at that night, but it was angina, blocking of the arteries. And they tried to put a stent in me, and they messed it up over there. Yeah? So they wouldn't let me fly. I was in hospital 10 days, and they put these stents in, but put them in badly. Yeah. The insurance company's going to pay for this operation now, because I've got private medical insurance, and they won't let me fly home alone. They send a young doctor down from Paris to pick me up in the hotel. So he said to me, can I come down about 2 o'clock, Mr. Lynch, and we'll get the 4 o'clock flight back to London? I said, yeah, that's fine. He said, well, where do I come? I said, you come to I'll give him the name of the hotel. And he went, oh, can I come at 8 o'clock in the morning? So I said, yeah, if you want. Why? He said, I'll tell you when I come. So he came down. He said, I was brought up, we'd come down here for holidays to Cannes, and he'd walk along the promenade, right? And then we'd see people in this hotel sitting on the beach having breakfast, and I always wanted to do it. So when you said that's where you are, I thought, oh, I'm going to do it. Mm. And he was a very, very nice guy. So we're sitting there talking, and I said to him, listen, they've put me on a diet. I've never been on a diet in my life. I don't understand. It's so complicated. He said, it isn't. It's simple. I said, it isn't. It's fucking complicated. He said, listen, it's simple. If it's nice, you can no longer have it. And he was absolutely right. Ever since then, of all the things I really, really like, I've had to cut down on, but eventually got better. But yeah, that was a strange time.
So that this at this point is this is coming together. Which led you to Phuket in early 2000?
Yeah, because it was a winter time, and I thought I got back to England. They reoperated on me, and they couldn't get into the thing that needed a stent. The vein that needed a stent was so small. The guy over here was brilliant, and he tried 2 or 3 times, and he couldn't get into it. And he said to me, well, look, it's going to be painful, but it can never kill you because it's too small. So put up with it. So I came over here in the winter time, and I found ever since then the cold weather's affected my chest. So I came over here with another partner, different partner on this latest business. Yeah. We went to Koh Samui, and it started raining. And he had never been here before. And it rained, and it rained, and it rained. And after about 5 days, he was in one room, I'm in another. He picked the phone and said, get me out of here. I can't stand this rain anymore. So he went to Bangkok, had a few nice days in Bangkok, packed to come home, to go home. And I'm sitting there with breakfast with him. I said to him, I'm not going. He said, you're not going where? I said, I'm not going home. He said, where are you going to go? I said, I don't know, but I'm not going home, it's too cold. You go and I'll see you in a few weeks' time. I went to the travel agent in hotel. I think I was in the Banyan Tree in Bangkok.
So you're in Koh Samui, and then you went to Bangkok?
Yeah.
And you're staying at the Banyan Tree there? Okay.
So I go to the travel agent in the Banyan Tree, and I said, look, I want to stay in, I don't want to go home yet. Maybe I'll go to Vietnam or something like that. She said, no, why don't you stay in Thailand with us, and I'll get you a room, nice room somewhere. So she went back a couple of hours later. She said, I've got your room in the Banyan Tree down here.
Right pretty much at the Laguna Golf.
Yeah,
at the Laguna Golf.
Laguna Golf.
Yeah.
I said, oh, how much is that? She said, 2009. I went, this is in the year 2000, remember? 2009. I said, you mean a week? She said, no, a night.
US or baht? Obviously
US.
US, yeah.
I said, why is it so expensive? Well, she said, well, you've got your own villa and a swimming pool. I said, I don't swim. I don't want it. So she sent me to another hotel at Cap D'Antibes. Not Cap D'Antibes.
Cap Yamu? Cap Panwa?
Panwa. Panwa Hotel.
Panwa, okay.
And again, I took a little girl from the Philippines. We arrived there. It was boring. She said, I'm not staying there. So I got a taxi, and we ended up in the Holiday Inn. I stayed there for a year.
The Holiday Inn in Patong?
In Patong.
In Patong.
Stayed there for a year with her. Not with her. She went back
to
college after a while.
Yeah.
And I stayed there. Yeah.
And so this is still early, kind of happening all at the same time.
All around the 2002. This is now maybe December and January 2000.
2000, yeah.
Yeah.
And now you're in Patong. You stayed at the Holiday Inn for a year. Now I remember you telling me you were living in Patong for a while.
13 years.
13 years.
Rented a house.
Were you going back and forth between the UK quite often? How long would you spend over here?
Maximum twice a year, because the business I was now doing or trying to do, I could do from home.
Yeah.
I could do it anywhere. All I need is a computer. As bad as I am at a computer, all I need is a laptop, and I can do it. I had people back in England, my son, looking after things back this end. And I'd come back for important meetings, and I'd return back to Phuket when I wasn't needed back in the UK, yeah? And I did that for say, lived in that house for 13 years. Then moved up here with into Ben Chainam with Sean, the golf pro.
Yep.
Stayed there for just about a year and a half, and then moved on to Laguna, and that's where I've been ever since.
And how? So then you're here before the tsunami. Did you see a difference before and after?
Oh, massive, yeah.
Specifically, like what is the difference before and after? Maybe just in terms of the whole dynamic of Phuket and tourism in general.
The day of the tsunami, bear in mind I'd had this problem with my heart. Yeah.
Were you here during the tsunami?
Yeah.
In Phuket?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I'm lying in bed and there was a shaking, and to be honest, I thought it was my blood pressure playing up there. And a guy from Bangkok rang me. He said, "Norman, how's Phuket?" I went, "What do you mean, how's Phuket?" He went, "They're clearing us out of the tall buildings up here because there's this tsunami." I said, "What's a tsunami?" He said, "Like a big tidal wave and an earthquake." I went, "Geez, I thought it was my blood pressure." Now, my then girlfriend had gone back to the Philippines, and I'd promised to go and get a ticket to come back, yeah? So I got in my car, and I'm driving down Soy Sansabai.
Right in Patong.
Right in the centre of Patong,
Yeah.
Right opposite Bangla Road, Soy Sansabai. Yeah. And I passed the Yorkshire Inn. And the guy that had the Yorkshire Inn at the moment said to me, "Norman, where are you going?" I went, "I'm just going to go down and get a ticket for Nicole to come back." He said, "You're fucking mad, you can't do that." I said, She ain't that bird." He said, "No, you silly." He said, "Leave the car there and just walk to the end of Sansabai." There was a boat on the crossroads, so Sansabai and Bangla Road.
Yeah.
And these motorbike things that on the water, they were all on the road. The wave had come right over, yeah? I walked down Bangla Road. I bumped into, God bless him, little Stevie Feinberg. And the havoc was unbelievable. You could not believe the things we were seeing. And the very next day, I remember walking down Beach Road, and there was a food hall underneath, a shop, Ocean. It was called the Ocean. And the ground floor, the basement rather, was all goods, a grocery place, yeah? The people had gone in the morning before to fill the shelves up, the staff. 2 cars had been swept down the steps by the tsunami, jammed the doors closed. Everyone in there was dead.
Because it's filled up with water and drowned.
And when we went there to say the following morning after tsunami, the divers were there bringing these bodies out, and I promise you, being sick, and then going back in and doing it and bringing more out. It was awful.
Fucking hell.
It was awful. It was a hell of a state. It was a real mess.
And how you just had no... when you were driving around, the wave, it's done its damage, it's gone now, and you're driving around not really understanding what's going on, or?
My landlord, when the tsunami hit, was driving down through Kalim with a girl in the car. His car got brushed out to sea, but if you know Kalim, you'll see all the rocks there.
Yeah.
He got stuck on the rocks, so it took him out there, and then he got stuck. They got out, and the tsunami was going, and he had to grab her and swim her back into shore. It was murder going on. But
it just kept coming. I mean, that's usually, it comes and goes. It's in and out.
It's in and out in no time at all. It only comes in the once.
Oh, okay.
What happens? It goes out. It's empty.
Yeah.
And the tsunami is coming afterwards. For instance, I had people I knew went out on a boat. They never felt it. They were about 7 or 8 miles out, never felt a thing.
Yeah.
Only heard about it on the radio when they're coming back in. But the whole of Phuket changed that day. It really did.
But where you were living in Patong, you were on like a higher story, or?
No, I was. My house was on the ground floor.
But you were further back, so
further back.
It never made it that far.
It didn't hit the house. No.
No, it didn't hit the house.
And again, about 10 days after that, there was a panic one night. And somebody shouted, "There's another tsunami coming!" And everyone rushed out again and went up the mountainside.
Yeah.
Back of Phuket there. It was awful, and I made the mistake after the tsunami hit on the one day. 3 days later, I went up to off the bridge up to Panya, and made the mistake of going into a church thing there where all the bodies were laid out. Oh, killed by it.
Yeah, because it hit there quite hard.
It's terrible.
Much worse there than here.
Cowlack. Yeah.
Cowlack, there's
Really
a
bad.
massive memorial out there because it's just an open beach, right? And apparently the tsunami kind of just flew right through that place.
When I drove back home, I must have counted 150 lorries going in the other way, full of coffins. I promise you, masses and masses of them. It was a terrible, terrible situation. Felt very sorry for
And
them.
did you stay much longer after the tsunami, or did you quickly kind of fly out, or
No,
did you
no,
stayed
stayed
through the havoc?
Mhm.
And what was going on also, like around the island, like besides the grieving, were people just trying to clean up the island, or what was happening?
Everybody was
exactly?
trying to help where they could. And in fact, JJ's, which is now the Soul Shack, it was JJ's because a guy called John was renting it as a bar, a very successful bar. And he put on a Friday night, charity night, and everything, once he reached 250,000 baht, he was giving it to the people in Bangtao there to rebuild their houses because them houses had just got
Demolished.
slaughtered. Yeah, demolished.
Right here in Bangtao, this whole and
This whole area. The area I'm talking about was go down to the end of Syrian Beach here, and then as a Bangtao, and you enter into Bangtao, it's all in houses there along the front there.
yeah, and you can tell because there is some new development there now, and I could imagine that probably that whole area would have been just pretty much wiped out. But there are some villages back there. I heard from another friend that he stayed in one of those houses. It was okay, maybe because of his location in Bangtao, but he said the whole house filled with water.
Yeah.
And he had to like go up on the roof and kind of wait it out.
Yeah.
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 And I think we actually had a guy on, was it not our last podcast, the one before, Sean Stenning, he works for 5 Star Marine. Well, it's his company, and he's doing a lot of the what is it, COVID charity food for the villages around the island. And yeah,
See the guy that gets the people coming every morning, 1,400 of them,
yeah,
charity, and they make up the food parcels.
yeah. He
I saw it on one of the reports on the paper.
yeah. So we had him on the podcast 2 episodes ago, and he explained.
doing a good job, obviously.
Yeah, he explained.
I didn't know they were still in need of it though.
Yeah, apparently 48,000 people a day don't have food here on the island.
How many?
48,000.
Jesus, where are they?
Mostly in the villages. It could be Rawai. It could be the other side, especially the marina side of the island, because those marina sides, they relied on tourism from like captains of boats, engineers, people working at the airport. Like that's the industry of that side of the island. I'm talking like Alpo Marina, Bang Rong, like when you jump off to go to these other small islands. They're devastated.
Because when we first got blocked down over a year ago now, I was driving back one day from somewhere, I don't know where I was come back from, but I passed the corner restaurant and I saw a big queue of people out there. And I said to somebody that day at the golf club, what are they queuing up for? He said, food. I said, Jesus, you're joking.
Yeah.
And for a couple of weeks after that, I was going round to him. There's a chicken place in opposite. Just give him money each day so they can make up his food packages, you know.
To help at least like.
But I didn't realise it was still going on.
Yeah, it's going on. It's quite bad. I mean, I think they're doing it once a week now, but there's only so many hands, and yeah, it's not so simple. So they're trying to get the government and I think the government's getting more involved to help with the transportation. That's one of the issues he was saying.
I know it was bad because I remember we also gave money to the caddies on Laguna.
Yeah.
And there's 181 caddies that work for Laguna at one stage or another or any one time. And 3 girls in particular collected enough money to give everyone a food bag. And the whole 181 got something, anyway. But I was a bit shocked that I didn't think the government helped out much.
Yeah, and it's, the problem is it's at the end of the day it's just a Band-Aid on the wound. It's not. It's not really. Until tourism comes back, there's not much you can really do here, right? I mean,
no, I feel very, very sorry for people trying to earn a living in these circumstances. It's incredible.
Yeah.
But I think most people are helping out wherever they can. They're doing their own thing.
Yeah, and that's. I mean, the island is the industry is 90% tourism. So without tourists, what do you do, right?
Well, that's it. Yeah.
That is what it is. So after the tsunami, how long did it take to Phuket come back from that? Was it quite quick, a year or so? Because actually, Sean said something interesting when he was on the podcast. He said he was in university at the time. He's about 35, 36. So he was telling me that during that university, when the tsunami hit here, he wasn't here yet, but they were doing a relief fund for Phuket. And he said most of the world, they were also doing relief funds. So a lot of money was coming from international communities into Phuket to fix the problem. He said, but the issue is, with COVID, everyone's facing the same problem. So there's no relief funds. There's issues in Canada. So you don't have, people that may have helped during the tsunami, they can't be helping Phuket now. So this is a bit of an issue.
The only people that can help now is the governments, because it is it's a pandemic.
Yeah.
And in fact, this morning I learnt that in the UK, they've spent 362 billion pounds on COVID problems, giving people money every month, the bounce back loans and all that sort of business, the furlough loans, all that sort of stuff. 362 billion in debt now, and now that's got to be paid back somehow, and it's enormous. But they're the only ones that can do it. The only governments can do it. They're right. I mean, the people that were helping out during the tsunami, and everyone around here was helping in the tsunami, they've now hit themselves. I mean, for instance, take the corner restaurant, which I talked about just now. He's closed.
Yeah.
So he was doing what he could to help.
Yeah, because location.
He can't do it forever. He just hasn't got the money to do it forever,
And did you see a quick turnaround? Like after the tsunami, did you stick around? Did you go back to the UK a year later?
I stayed here. I stayed here.
You stayed for a couple years, and you saw it come back together. And how was that first? Since you've been here for both the tsunami and COVID, what was worse economically? Do you feel?
COVID. Take tsunami. It happened. It was over, and it finished. People knew what they had to do to put things back into shape. It wasn't funny. It wasn't clever. It was very, very sad. But it was over in a matter of hours. COVID has been with us now for nearly 18 months, and we still don't know when it's going to end. You are trying to make decisions. After the tsunami, you knew what you had to do. We had to rebuild these houses. You had to buy a new car because a lot of cars got absolutely ruined, and that was an insurance claim. So you knew what you had to do. But with COVID, even today, we don't know when it's going to happen. We don't know when it's over. How do you make decisions about the future when you don't know what the future is holding? So today, I've heard, as I said just now, 362 billion the English government's given out. Is that the end of it? I doubt it. They're talking about having to tax us a bit more to get the money back in. I understand that. But when is it going to end?
And that's the problem with the uncertainty.
There's a new variation coming over now, thanks to Boris Johnson.
And during that tsunami period, and when you were in here, did you have any Thai friends, restaurant owners, people that you connected with in the local economy that it affected them, not just economically, but maybe the loss of loved ones? And how did you cope with that, or deal with that, or were you consoling them?
Wherever you could, but I must say that I didn't know many people that actually lost their lives in it. Miraculous stories. There was a guy that had a bar by Gracelands. You know the Hotel Gracelands?
In Patong.
In Patong, on the beach road. And next to Graceland, or just down from Graceland, is the Muslim cemetery with a big wall around it. Now, now this guy had a bar, and he went swimming every morning. He got caught up in the tsunami, which brought him over the wall and then sucked him back out again. And he said, Norman, I could see myself smashing into this wall, face first, because you couldn't swim, and that was me gone. And my face is going to go everywhere. He said, God, just as I've approached the wall collapsed, and I just went out to sea again. It calmed down, and I swam back. I mean, he said, you're seconds away from knowing you're going to die. And you're going to die in a way that you can't do anything about it. So my hands were back here and my head was going to go into the brick wall. With the wave of going out, yeah? He said, just the wall collapsed. And he was right, because I saw the wall collapse for ages. We came up here for golf at Laguna, got to Camilla. And as you exit Camilla, there was a big pond on the right. And there was a minibus in there with buddies in it. And I was there in the morning, they were bringing the minibus out. And in the hotel where I was living, where I lived for a year, there was a tuk-tuk in the swimming pool, because if the swimming pool was right on Beach Road, there was 3 guys and a driver in the minibus, in the thing, dead.
And none of the water came into your place at that time, so you
never reached the house I was in. I was on, the new road now, the 3rd road.
Yes.
In Patong. Mine was backing up to that wall. So that's where I was.
So you're quite far back.
So it came up to the main Register Road, on the crossroads by Bangla and Soy Sensabai. But it never came as far as me, no.
Mm. And did you have many friends on the island? Were you golfing at that time as well?
Oh, yeah. Every year. Loads of them. Yeah.
And no one, did anyone have any issues with their homes or their businesses?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have bars that got drenched and sacked, and they lost sort of stock and stuff like that. But I say that was, you went round and you helped out wherever you could. But I can't say I knew anyone that actually died in the tsunami, no. I mean, I read about it on the TV and we were watching it all the time. For instance, the phones went down, right? And you couldn't get a mobile phone to work for 3 or 4 days. And eventually, when my son got hold of me, he said, "Are you all right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine, mate." He said, "Fucking hell."
Yeah, so he's freaking out for 3 or 4 days. They can't even call the hotel.
The system went down.
Yeah.
Couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
It was just a very nasty time, but you knew what had to be done. And everybody that wasn't affected helped.
So it happened on Christmas Eve, 2004. And how quick was everything kind of put back together? Within 6 months, a year?
Some places took longer than others. I mean, there was a hotel up at Cowluck that they just finished, and it got literally blasted. So that would have taken years to rebuild. Yeah. But the normal, the little shops you see around the town, I mean, they're very versatile. A couple of weeks and then things are back to normal again. But it was the fright that was still in people. Say 10 days later, when somebody panicked and shouted tsunami, that everyone flew again. And I was at home working that night. And a guy called Kevin, a bricklayer from London, rang me. He said, "Norman, where the fuck are you?" I said, "I'm at home." Where's the mate? He said, "There's a tsunami coming. Get out." I said, "I'm too late. I'm fucking indoors." He said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'll go on the roof."
And did you?
No, the tsunami never came. I was listening for it. It never came. And it wasn't a second tsunami. It was a panic. Somebody panicking.
Yeah. And
you could understand the panic, by the way. I mean, there were terrible stories. For some reason at the time, I had to go to the German consul here on the bypass, yeah? And he was talking on the phone about one of the government sent over a freezer lorry, yeah, to put bodies into. 3 years later, some bodies were still in that freezer. They couldn't identify them. Burmese workers and people like that. No form of identification. Whether they're still dead, I guess they're not there now.
Yeah.
But also, when I went up to Cowlack, I saw, you remember the boat, the steel boat that got swept in?
Yeah.
I saw that. It was a mile and a half inland.
I think it's still there. I think they left it there.
But they've ruined it. They've painted it, and it crashed into a forest. So there are broken trees all around it. It looked very dramatic. They've taken all the trees away. They've concreted all the floor and painted the boat. It's stupid. When I saw it, they should have left it exactly as it was, because that's what happened to it. Now it just looks like a concrete pavement with a boat in it.
Yeah, and these places like, Cowlack, it has the memorial, and I've never went to the memorial because I'm a bit, I don't really want to kind of go inside and experience that, because I've heard it's quite gruesome as well. I've seen some of that stuff in Cambodia, where genocide stuff, and it's not. It's hard to. you don't want to keep that in the back of your mind either. It's kind of out of mind, out of sight, out of mind. When do you go to Calac often anymore for even golf, or like, besides obviously with COVID and you cannot leave the island? Have you been
The last time
traveling
I went there,
around Thailand?
my girlfriend, I've got a daughter now in the Philippines.
Yeah.
So when they were coming over, we used to go up to a place in Cowlack where we'd rent a villa, not a villa, it's a small bedroom really, but right in the swimming pool, overlooking the sea. She loves the sea, she loves swimming. So we'd go up there, and that's the last time I went. So I haven't been there really for a couple of years, I guess. Though I understand there's a new golf club up there, but I don't want to go off the island at the moment.
I heard there's a new golf club, and right now the prices are really good. It's some friend, but you need the vaccine. You got to go off the island, then you got to deal with that if you get locked out.
But I'll tell you, it was funny at the time, because when I first came here, I knew nobody. Another girl came over from the Philippines, and she wanted to go out, and so we went out. And I walked down Bangla Road, went into Soyeezy, and there was a guy talking English, and I thought, oh, that's good. So I started chatting to him, He had Fettis Bar. It was called Fettis Bar. And he had a partner called Stevie Feinberg. So I was going in there every night and spending some money on the girls, on the digital crap that goes on,
Yeah.
And after 3 or 4 weeks, I'm still on my own, and I went down to Naihan on the beach there. Phone rang. Stevie Feinberg from the Fettis Bar. He said, Ryan, and I said, on the beach down at Ryan, it's called. He said, I'd like to come down and buy you lunch. I said, what for? He said, well, you come in every night, you're looking after the girls, you're spending a few quid. That's just my way of saying thanks. I said, all right, come over. So he come over. Now, this is the first time we're able to talk when we're not in a bar where the conversation is girls and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So he said to me, what did you do for a living back home? And I said, oh, bits and bobs of this and that. What about you? He said, oh, well, I had art metalwork company. I said, doing what? He said, doing all fancy metalwork, mainly for shop fitters. I said, oh, yeah. He said, so what was the name of your company? I said, Appeals. He went, you owe me 650,000. I said, you're fucking joking. I lost 140 million. Yours 160, not 50 grand fucking gone, mate. And that was true. He said, do you know, I could never get near you. All your fucking directors were protecting you all the time. I could never get near you, to take you out and get to know you, try and get a bit more business out of you. So we started laughing and joking about it, and we become good friends.
Yep.
I'm going back to London one day, and he said to me, no, do us a favour. Could you buy me a tailor-made driver when you're back in England? Because they're more expensive in Thailand, right?
Yeah.
So I said, yeah. So I went over, and I've come back, and I've got him with this driver. And I said to him, here's a driver, Steve. He said, oh, thanks. How much do I said, no, forget it. He said, what size shoes do you wear? I said, 42. Why? He said, I bought a pair of shoes, and they gave me the wrong size, and they're 42. I'm only, 38 or something. He said, golf shoes, do you want them? I said, yeah, okay. So we go out a few nights later when we're getting pissed. And he says to this, with the group of people, he said, he fucking owes me 650 grand and can't fucking pay me. I said, hang on, I gave you a fucking driver. He said, yeah, but I gave you a pair of shoes. And we laughed about it many times, but it was fucking true. I never knew him in London. All them years I had the business in London, never knew him at all. Met him out here.
It's a small world when you kind of come over here.
It is when you come here,
into the most random.
Absolutely, yeah.
And he's, I'm assuming he's no longer...
He died of cancer 3 years ago.
Yeah. So he was one of your first friends when you first kind of...
Yeah, and he was a good friend. He was a nice friend. And it was him introduced me to Ronnie, of Irish Times.
Yeah. Yeah, we were there last night having...
In fact, I financed his bar for him, Stephen Feinberg, when he moved from Fettis Bar into Bunny Bar. He had
this is all still on Bangla?
Yeah. Yeah, so that was... He was a nice guy. I like Steve. He was very good.
And he, his wife's still here, or no idea?
No, he was divorced when he came.
Oh, okay.
He had a Thai
that's what I
girl
mean,
he lived with, but no, she's gone back. She's gone back to now.
Okay. We'll almost wrap it up, and we'll kind of. I just wanted to ask two other questions, and it's nothing crazy, anyways. I think what's interesting, especially for me, in this new generation, we got to use email and laptops, and we have access to the internet. How did that differentiate during your time in the 70s, 80s, and 90s when this technology did not exist, and pretty much you're dealing with pen and paper and also running, an operation with over 1,000 people? How did you keep yourself organized? Did you have daily routines? Can you walk us through that a little bit? Because I think most people today, I can't even fathom how that could be run so smoothly and efficiently without dual screen laptops, email, instant connection. I wouldn't even be able to understand it.
In them days, the biggest difference, it was personal. You met people. You spoke with people. I told you how I met Tom McAuliffe. Now, he could have gone the other way. He could have said, you bastard. We met, we started talking, and we became close friends. Right up until the time he died, yeah? And everything was on a personal level. I ended up, bear in mind we started this little business years and years earlier. By the time my business went down, Tom McAuliffe, the CEO of Argos, worked for me. Their finance director worked for me. And their commercial director worked for me. And while they were working for me, they had another idea that I financed also, because by then I had 17 or 18 companies within the group, yeah. But business then was on a personal level. And you had to learn how to treat people different. I mean, now, for instance, you take today, you sent me a message. Years ago, you'd have picked the phone up to me.
Yeah.
Because there was no messaging, and you'd speak. Now you message, and I know you only saw by chance when you said, can you make it 2:00, yeah? Mm. Because my phone doesn't make a noise when a message comes in, or if it does, the noise is so small you can't hear the bloody thing anyway. But years ago, everything was done on a personal level. And you had to arrange things in advance, because you couldn't do it on the spot like you can now. But mainly it was because it wasn't just a personal thing. You got on, they liked your personality, either trusted your personality or they didn't. If they didn't, you didn't get the work. If they trusted you for whatever reason, that was fine. If you built a reputation that said, yeah, this guy's going to give you a good job, that was what it was all about. You had to be, in our business, I had to be a nasty bastard. We were in a business where all but say 3% of our staff were men. And they had to know that if you said, do it, they had to do it. Mm. So that was the biggest difference. Today, I must agree, it's much easier. But I mean, things are going to change from this point forward as well because of COVID. It's going to be much quicker. For instance, I used to fly before COVID. I'd be in Dubai 3-4 times a year, because that's where we have certain business interests. Now, the same business interests get discussed over Zoom. The last Zoom meeting was early last week. The people from the banks come in. My office comes in. I'm over here. If I want Paul in from England, he comes in. And we still discuss things. I mean, I think this is a great asset to any business, yeah?
What do you feel?
But it is much colder. Businesses are colder.
Is that the difference between these Zoom meetings and a handshake one-on-one sitting down at a restaurant? It's much colder. It's not as personal. Specifically, what is it? The subtle mannerisms that you could pick up on someone's during that conversation that you might interpret the wrong way?
And if you did say something that was misunderstood, you could clear it up immediately. Whereas with these Zoom meetings, you've got to wait your turn to come in and out. And by the time the last time, for instance, we got 40 minutes at a time, right? Because there's more than one. It's not a one-for-one meeting. So you only get 40 minutes, and then you break off and you've got to go back again, right? And there was something I wanted to ask, and it broke off. So I rang back my office and said, look, I forgot to ask him X, Y, and Z. He said, I'll ask him when I come back to you. That was over 10 days ago. It's not come back yet.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're there live, you don't forget these things. You do it straight away. In many, many respects, I suppose this is a more efficient way of doing business. Every meeting that was organised, somebody had to travel to it. When I was dealing business with Umdash in Austria, the number of times I flew out there was loads of times, yeah? You had things to discuss with people. It cost money when you were sending people out there to test things that were right. For instance, we would, first time we ever done business with Selfridges, I took out their building manager to Austria. So you're a day travelling there, you're a day there, and you're a day travelling back. It's 3 days. That's all. And there's, say, 4 or 5 of you.
Plus
it's all costing money.
Hotels,
Now you wouldn't have to
transportation,
do it.
yeah.
Now you could send pictures of the stuff over, yeah? I can remember, for instance, somebody coming in my office and saying, Norman, all this business going back and forward to Austria, we've got a machine here called a facsimile machine. I said, what's that? He said, well, they can send a drawing over to us.
Document.
I said, don't be silly. What are you talking about? He said, no, we bought it. We've just got on trial. Come and see it. So I went out. There's this fucking big machine there. They got on the phone and said, right, send it. But you had to be the same machine. To send it and the receive, you had to be the same. They'd phone it. So send it over. Sit there. About 2 minutes later, this drawing comes and I said, fucking hell. Can't believe it. Amazing. Now, it's old-fashioned, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's gone.
Didn't stay around that long.
No. But at the time, the first people ever used it were the police.
Mm.
They put your mugshot on it and sent it to another police station. They were the first ones to use facsimile machines. But now, the big difference was it was personal. And I quite enjoyed it that way as well. Because you'd go out drinking. You get drunk together, right? Or you get drunk together. For instance, I would do things. I would take clients to a restaurant and I'd say, what do you want to drink? And I said, I'll have a gin and a tonic. Now, the maitre d' knew me and he knew he'd put no gin in my tonic.
Mm.
And gin and tonic, looked exactly the same, right? And I was drinking tonic. They were drinking gins and tonics and whiskies, whatever they were drinking, right? And the drunker they got, the more they spoke. And I was stone cold sober. So I knew exactly what I was doing.
And you had your intention of trying to get some sort of information that evening.
Yeah.
And what happened? Did the maitre d' ever slip up? And
Nope.
No.
Each restaurant I went to, I would say to them, now it's a business night. Yes, Mr. Lynch. No problem.
They understood what that meant.
Yeah.
So do you think that things are becoming less personal? It's better for business because it's more cost efficient, but now you're losing you're not creating stronger relationships faster. So it's kind of, it's
Yeah, I don't think you get the same relationship, that's all. It can't be the same, can it? When you can send me a fax message, you can go to a Zoom meeting, you can send pictures around by the second sort of thing, yeah? It's totally different. I guess it's got to be more efficient, but it's colder.
Mm.
And I think this pandemic also is going to be the start, and there's going to be a big upset here. People will no longer have to go to an office 5 days a week. It won't be necessary. And this has speeded it up. But the moment you say that, then you look at the repercussions of what's going to happen. The major use is people will not have to go into offices. They won't have to go necessarily into shops every day, yeah? These office blocks are built, they're rented out, and they're bought by insurance companies. And the insurance companies are, in fact, your pension funds. That's where they invest the money. So now with these empty office blocks, look at the repercussions. What's going to happen to your pension funds? Because those values on the office blocks are going to drop. Mm. In the same way that the high streets, because of the tech giants, the high streets are suffering. The only people on Kensington High Street where I live are charity shops, betting shops, coffee shops, patisseries and things like that. The shoe shops are closing. The stores are closing. Them rents are what funds the pension funds for the country. And it's all going to get lower and lower and lower. So there's going to be a massive problem in years to come. And not many years either, 2 or 3 years.
These are the government pensions in the UK and...
No, even private pensions. A pension fund buys the income from somebody like Tesco. On a bad yield, you'll get, say, a 15% yield. That's it. But if you've got Tesco in, your multiplier is 30-odd years. So let's say they're paying you 100 grand a year. It's 30 times that. It's the value of the building. Now that they're not in the high streets anymore, that value is going to disappear because you can't get anybody to replace it. What's going to happen to that lack of money, that loss of funds?
What do you think will be the long-term issues from this?
Pension funds are going to suffer. How you replace that pension fund money, I've got no idea just yet. The tech giants are quite rightly and understand what they're doing, are not paying their due taxes. They've got to start paying, or the repercussion is going to get too serious.
Yeah, these tech companies, they have, holdings and, well...
They do what we all do. Yeah?
Sure.
But they're so big.
Yeah.
You're not talking about a turnover now. A healthy turnover years ago was 400 million, 500 million, 600 million. Now you're talking billions. 5.6 billion a quarter. I mean, Jesus Christ. Look at chip companies,
Yeah.
Semiconductor chips. They're normally around 6-7 billion a quarter. That's a lot of money. And with all these technologies that they're bringing forward, it just means that things are changing. How you pay off that change, I don't know what's going to do. I don't know.
What if there was a young kid coming up out of college and just getting to get started in business, not the technical aspect of business, but just general, what is your advice for that kid coming up? What would you tell him going forward?
There's room for everybody. Another thing that happened in England under Tony Blair, he wanted everybody to go to university, which is a load of crap. Certain people don't want to go to university. And we need workers, we need plumbers, we need electricians, we need carpenters. How can you build a house if everyone's going to university? They want to be lawyers or money brokers, yeah? That's no good. There's a spread, everyone is needed, certain things. And right now, if a guy wasn't interested in university, you know what I tell him to do? Go, be a plumber. You'll earn a bloody fortune. There's a company in Pimlico called Pimlico Plumbers. Very similar sort of attitude as mine. He's earning big, big money. He's a plumber. He now employs 600-700 plumbers. And it's big, big business. There's room for everybody. Yes, we need lawyers. You need a certain amount of people to go to university. But you can't say everybody needs to go to university. Tony Blair wanted that.
Well, even the plumber, they would need some sort of... if they went to business school, it could be much more an advantage, like instead of just doing an apprenticeship as a plumber, because even if you just have that trade, if you don't understand the business side of it, it would be quite difficult to run your own business as well. And not everyone's as savvy as like, I would say, the older generation, where you guys were kind of just forced to learn it along the way.
The managing director of Argos was a rugby player called Mike Smith, big tough guy. He knew my background, because obviously before you start giving big business to people, you've got to find out about them. And he said to me one day, I'm not being rude, Norm, but you never had a college education. I said, no. He said, I did, 7 years of it. And yet you're worth all this money and I'm still working for somebody for wages. Why? I said, you know why? You were taught the downfall of things. I never was. I didn't believe it could go wrong. I was stupid. I thought all I can do is I can buy this for 1, I can sell it for 2, and I'll have the bit in the middle. It was simple.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you got taught all the technicalities of what you do, what you want. The story I told you about Eric and his son leaving the university with a business degree.
Yep.
Went skint within 18 months. A Jewish fella said to me years ago, if you can't be clever, be shrewd. If you're shrewd, you'll always have money. And he's absolutely right.
Mm.
I had the worst education I could have had because I just wasn't there. I had something else instead. I'm not sure what it was.
You didn't get lost in the weeds either of the educational industry of they're pushing that on you, and that's what happens because the technical side you can get lost in because it cannot even be applicable 10 years later anyway. So better to stay true to.
Especially these days, yeah. It's changing too quick, isn't it? It's like at the moment now the big thing is AI, yeah.
Yeah, that's
what happens when that really catches on?
Well, there'll be a 4-day work week, a reduction in jobs, and I think people will. I don't think there will be that 5-day work week once AI is.
But that means you've got to pay them more for 4 days. The money they would have earned in 5, you've got to give them now for 4. And that may not matter because maybe with AI you're earning good money anyway.
Well, maybe they can be more efficient. Maybe they can wear more hats in a company. Maybe you don't need someone to do, marketing and someone to do sales. You can have someone doing both. Maybe you can have, you can do multiple positions in your company. All right.
That's it.
I think we've talked, we're probably a 2 hour plus. We'll wrap it up. Thanks a lot, Norman, for joining us.
Young man.
What camera am I looking at here? I got too many. This one? Okay. So if you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, leave some comments for Norman. If you have any questions on his antics, I'll try to get them out of him another time. But we've kind of reached the end of his stories, but I'm sure we could have him back if that happens. We are Fruiting Body Mushrooms. Fruiting Body is the brand. We will be coming out with medicinal mushroom supplements in maybe Q4 and whatnot. The idea behind Fruiting Body is we want to show people that they can reach their full potential, and let's show that through podcast stories and show different diverse stories of people living in Phuket. And if that's interested to you, hit us up and let us know if there's any other people you'd like to see us bring on our podcast. So that's enough for today, and I never know how to end these things, so yeah, we're out.
Goodbye, yeah, fine. Take care.
And that was good, guys. Thank you.
Oh,
How come you haven't got your picture on that?
this is actually, so that's the event we filmed, see it? The signs from downstairs.
Yeah, but why aren't you fine?